Hi everyone, today's video is an introduction to functions. We are going to be learning about what functions are, how we can tell if a relation is a function, what the vertical line test is, and how we can use it to determine if a relation is a function. So without further ado, let's get started. A function is a type of relation in which every value of x has one and only one corresponding value of y. Now that we know what a function is, let's look at these two example tables and see if these relations represent functions. In the first table, every x value is different from the one below it. Therefore, we can determine that this relation is a function because each of these x values only appears once and therefore only has one corresponding y value. However, as we look at the next table, we can see that the x value 3 appears 2 times. This means that it has two corresponding y values, which are 0 and -2. Based on this, we can determine that this relation is not a function. Now it's your turn to see if you understood what you learned. Pause the video here to see if you can determine which of the following relations represent functions. Now that you've finished answering the questions, let's go through the solutions. In the first chart, the x value 6 appears 2 times. This means that it has two corresponding y coordinates, which are 0 and 1. This means that this relation is not a function. However, for the other two charts, each of the x coordinates has one and only one corresponding y coordinate, meaning that they are both functions. Now that we've learned how to determine whether or not a relation is a function based off of the data provided in a chart or table, let's look at the vertical line test, which allows us to determine whether or not a relation is a function based off of its graph. The vertical line test states that in order for a relation to be a function, a vertical line must pass through the graph at one and only one point. To illustrate that, I'm going to draw some vertical lines across the circle graph below. You can see that this relation is not a function because the vertical lines cross the graph at more than one point. However, if I were to draw vertical lines across this linear relation, you can see that the vertical lines only cross the graph at one point, thus meaning that this linear relation is a function. Now that you've learned about the vertical line test, use your knowledge to determine which of the following graphs represent functions. Here are the solutions for the questions. Let's go through them together. The first two graphs are representative of functions, because if we draw vertical lines across the graph at several different points, we notice that the vertical lines only ever cross the graph at one point, thus allowing us to determine that these graphs are functions. However, for the last graph, if we draw several vertical lines across the graph, we notice that the vertical lines cross the graph at 2 points. And since it crosses the graph at 2 points, we know that the x values will have more than one y value, therefore allowing us to determine that this graph is not representative of a function. Now that we've learned about the vertical line test and have practiced applying our knowledge, let's further our understanding of functions by considering this example, which states that all linear relations are functions except for the equation x equals constant. We can prove this by conducting the vertical line test on the graphs below. As you can see, all of the graphs pass the vertical line test, except for the last graph, which has the equation of x equals 3. This is because the graph of x equals 3 has infinite values of y for one value of x, thus proving that this relation is not representative of a function. However, all of the other graphs are representative of functions. So that concludes the content for this video. I know the audio quality hasn't been perfect, but I hope that you have been able to still gain a better understanding of what a function is and how to identify it. If you have any additional questions, feel free to comment them down below and I'll try my best to respond to you. If not, I hope to see you in the next video.